It was supposed to be my last delivery of the night, or at least one of the last. I worked at a pizzeria called Leonardo's, and my boss, Frank, was on the night shift with me. He decided which deliveries we each took. We got an order for 2 regular pizzas. Frank handed me a slip of paper with the address and phone number. This was back in 2009. I didn't have a GPS on my phone, just an old flip phone. I also didn't have one of those Garmin GPS devices, so I had to use a map book to find my way around. The delivery was on a street called something like Willows Road. I don't remember the house number or the name on the order, but I do remember how hard it was to find the place. The town was very rural, full of trees and farmland, with barely any streetlights. I had to pull over a few times to turn on my car's interior light and check the map. It was stressful driving around in the dark, unable to find the house. Eventually, I decided to call the number on the slip. The phone rang over and over. It had no voicemail, and after about 10 rings, someone finally picked up. I waited for them to say hello, but they didn't. So I said it first. Then, in a deep but soft voice, they repeated it back. I said, "Hey, this is the pizza guy. I'm having trouble finding your place." The person spoke slowly and in a flat tone, explaining that their driveway was easy to miss because it looked like a dirt trail. They described what to look for, and after a little more searching, I found it. I turned onto a narrow dirt path, driving slowly. After about 30 seconds, a small one-story house came into view. A dim orange light glowed from one of the windows. I parked next to an old, beat-up pickup truck, grabbed the pizzas, and walked to the door. There was no doorbell, so I knocked. I heard old music playing inside, followed by footsteps. They stopped at the door, and after about 10 seconds, it cracked open slightly. I could only see part of someone's face, just one eye peeking out. I nervously asked, "Hey, you ordered the pizza, right?" The man answered, "Oh yes. The pizza." I recognized his voice from the phone call. There was an awkward pause before I asked, "Do you have the cash?" He said, "Yes, let me go get it." He walked away, and I heard his footsteps moving into another room. The music playing was really old, something from the 1930s, which only made things feel creepier. Then, the door started opening on its own, little by little. I could now see inside. The house looked ancient. There were metal sheets on the floor, probably covering holes. The couch and furniture looked like they were from another century. The music was coming from an old-fashioned record player, one of those with a big horn on top. But the worst part was the smell. The whole place smelled like something had died in there. I waited for the man to come back, but after a while, it started feeling weird. I knocked on the open door and called out, "Sir?" His voice came from another room, "Yes?" Then he said, "Would you mind coming into the kitchen, please?" My boss always told us never to go inside a customer's house unless we had to. That advice seemed more important than ever right now. I pretended not to hear him and asked, "What was that?" He repeated, "Can you come to the kitchen, please?" I stepped inside just a little. The floor felt weak, like it might break under me. The house was long and narrow. To my right was the kitchen, where the voice was coming from. To my left was a hallway with several closed doors. Then I noticed something down the hallway. A man was standing there with his back to me. He was moving, dancing slowly in a really strange way, touching his own body as he swayed. If I weren't so creeped out, I might have laughed. But in that moment, it was terrifying. I turned back toward the kitchen, still holding the pizzas. As I took a few steps forward, I noticed something else. Someone was peeking at me from behind the wall. It was the same man from the door. Again, I could only see part of his face, just one eye staring at me. My mind raced. What is going on? Should I just leave? I asked again, "Do you have the cash?" He didn't answer. Instead, he let out a strange, low giggle. It was deep and soft at the same time, making my skin crawl. Then, in a much louder and harsher voice, he suddenly called out, "Randall." That was it. I had reached my limit. I turned and walked straight to the front door. As I stepped outside, I glanced down the hallway. The man who had been dancing was now just standing there, staring at me. I hurried to my car, still holding the pizzas. I tossed them into the passenger seat, got in, and locked the doors. As I backed up to turn around, I looked back at the house. The front door was wide open again. My heart pounded at the thought that one of them might be outside, reaching for my car door. Maybe they were, I'll never know. I got my car back onto the main road and drove straight to the pizzeria. I called Frank to tell him what happened. He wasn't mad. When I got back, everyone laughed when I told the story. I understood why, it sounded funny. But at the time, it was anything but. Something was wrong in that house. I don't think they actually wanted pizza. For a long time after that, I kept having nightmares about that man's face peeking around the corner. After that night, I never stepped inside a customer's house again. I used to deliver food for Uber Eats. I was struggling to pay off my student loans, so I worked hard to make extra money. At the time, I still lived with my parents. One late night, I picked up an order from a fast food place in Wilmington, North Carolina, and had to deliver it to a house about 20 minutes away. I liked doing late-night deliveries because there was less traffic and I could make more money. I left the busy part of town and drove toward a quiet area with forests and farms. The roads were dark and there were no other cars around. I turned onto a small road with a dead end. This was where the delivery address was. The road led to the last house, and all the houses on the street were dark. Even the house I was delivering to had no lights on. I used my car's headlights and my phone's flashlight to see as I walked to the front porch. The house looked empty. The grass was tall, and there were no signs of life. I rang the doorbell, but it didn't work, so I knocked. The customer had chosen contact delivery, which meant I had to hand the food to them directly. I messaged the customer through the Uber Eats app, saying I was at the door and asking them to confirm the address. They replied, "Give me a second." I waited, staring at the dark windows, expecting a light to turn on. Nothing happened. I messaged again, asking them to type out their address. After a while, they replied, "I see you. You're at the right house." That's when I noticed there were no cars around. It didn't make sense. I asked the customer to tell me what kind of car they saw outside. They said, "I see your light." That confirmed I was at the right place, but it still felt weird. I started backing away from the door, not wanting to be too close when it opened. But the door never opened, no matter how many times I messaged the customer. I started to think this was a scam to get free food. Then I heard a voice in the darkness. A man said, "Over here." I waved my flashlight around, trying to see who was talking. I yelled, "I'm leaving the food on the porch." I didn't know who was out there or where they were. I was scared, thinking I might be attacked. I walked back to my car, trying not to run. When I got to my car, I heard a hissing sound, the sound of air leaking from a slashed tire. I looked and saw that both tires on the left side of my car were cut. I guess the right side tires were cut too. I got into my car and locked the doors. The dashboard showed warnings that all 4 tires were losing air. I panicked, trying to decide whether to call the police or run for help. I was about to run when I noticed someone standing outside my window. I screamed, and then I saw there were at least 4 people around my car, 1 at each window. They all wore masks. One of them yelled, "Get out of the car now." I didn't know if they had a gun, but I knew if I tried to drive away with flat tires, I wouldn't get far. I yelled through the window, asking if they just wanted to rob me. One of them said if I gave them everything, they'd let me go. I agreed and unlocked the door. As soon as I did, the guy outside yanked the door open and pulled me out. They beat me up and took everything, my smartwatch, shoes, wallet, phone, and even stuff from my glove compartment. Then they ran off into the darkness. I passed out and woke up about half an hour later, still lying next to my car. They'd even taken my keys. I got up and walked toward the nearest light I could see, which was a small house closer to the main road. I rang the doorbell until someone answered. A woman opened the door a little, and I told her I'd been robbed and needed to use a phone. She let me in, and I called the police, roadside assistance, and my dad. The police came and took me back to my car. They asked me questions and took my statement. My car was towed, and my dad came to pick me up. My phone's last location was down the street from where it happened, and it hadn't been turned on since the night before. The thieves probably destroyed it. The next day, I talked to detectives. They traced the Uber Eats account to a guy named Logan, who said he'd lost his phone and wallet. Whoever found or stole them had used his account to set up the delivery and rob me. The house where this happened was empty and for sale. My car tires were covered by insurance, but I had to pay for everything else that was stolen. It was a painful and expensive lesson, but it taught me to be more careful. I stopped doing deliveries for a few months, and when I started again, I only worked during the day. I'm 20 now, but this happened when I was 19. I live in Newark, Delaware, a small, quiet town most of the year. But when college starts in the fall and spring, it gets busy and loud. Newark is home to the University of Delaware, a big school known for parties. When the students come, the town gets lively. I work as a bike delivery guy for Jimmy John's. I still work there. This story happened on a Tuesday or Wednesday night in spring, maybe late April or early May. I don't remember exactly. I usually work from 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. Our store stays open until 2 a.m. on weekdays and 3 a.m. on weekends. Since we're one of the few places open late, we get a lot of drunk college kids ordering food. It gets crazy, and deliveries come in nonstop. It's annoying, but the tips are good, so I deal with it. This was my last night working that shift. Right before 2 a.m., one last delivery came in, and I had to take it. I was annoyed because I just wanted to go home and sleep. But I didn't have a choice, so I took it. I knew the street well and got there in less than 10 minutes. I knocked on the door loudly, but no one answered. I knocked again, even louder, still nothing. I was getting mad because if no one answered, I'd have to take the food back to the store, wasting my time. I called the number on the receipt, but no one picked up. Just as I was about to call the store, I heard rustling in some bushes across the street. I thought it was the wind, but decided to look. When I did, my stomach dropped. I saw a dark figure crouched in someone's yard, hiding behind bushes. I couldn't see their face, but I could tell they were watching me. My heart raced, but I pretended not to notice. I knocked on the door again, but still, no one answered. I started to panic, wondering if this was some kind of trap. I glanced back, and the person was still there, watching me. I just wanted to leave, so I kept knocking as loud as I could. Finally, someone came to the door, looking annoyed. I told him about the order, but he said he didn't order it. It was probably his roommate. The roommate was upstairs, passed out drunk. I didn't understand how he could have fallen asleep so fast after ordering. The guy went upstairs to wake his roommate. While he was gone, I heard more rustling. I looked back and saw the person in the bushes had moved closer, still watching me. I was scared and wanted to go inside, but I was afraid the person would steal my bike. I also didn't know if they had a weapon or if they'd try to hurt me or the people inside. The guy came back and said his roommate's door was locked and he wouldn't wake up. I just wanted to leave, so I told him to sign for the order. He hesitated because there was no tip, but I didn't care about that anymore. I kept insisting, and finally, he signed. I handed him the food, said thanks, and hurried to my bike. As I was about to ride away, the person in the bushes suddenly jumped out and ran toward me. I saw he was wearing jeans, boots, and a black hoodie with the hood up. I think he had a mask on, and it looked like he was holding a knife. I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't turn around because he'd catch me. All the nearby streets were dead ends, so my only chance was to ride onto a dark bike trail nearby. I didn't have a light, but I knew the trail well. I pedaled as fast as I could onto the trail. It was pitch black, and I kept looking for shadows and listening for footsteps. I was so scared that every little noise made me jump. Luckily, the trail wasn't long, and I made it back to the store safely. I was breathing hard, trying to figure out what just happened. I didn't tell my boss or coworkers, and I didn't call the police because I didn't get a good look at the guy. I just clocked out, put my bike in my car, and drove home. No one followed me, and I made it home safe. I never saw that man again. I don't know what he wanted, if he wanted to rob me or something worse. I haven't worked a late night shift since then, and now I carry nunchucks with me when I work at night. Newark isn't a dangerous town, so this showed me that anything can happen anywhere, no matter how safe a place seems.